All right, so Mr. Pierre has announced some pretty big tax changes just recently, actually just yesterday, basically saying conservatives promise to defer tax on capital gains to boost domestic investment, which sounds similar to the 1031 exchange that the US has, and I will show you what that is in a sec here. So conservative leader Pierre Pollievre is pitching a new tax measure he says would act like rocket fuel for the Canadian economy, a deferral of tax on capital gains. So then he says, think of companies that have invested abroad. This would allow them to sell those foreign investments and bring it home tax-free. At the end of the day, this will mean more investment. This will be like economic rocket fuel for Canada to put us in liftoff. We will soar above the Americans. I don't know if I fully believe that, but I think it's a step in the right direction. The proposed tax deferral window would be open for 18 months beginning in July. So how I understand this is you sell a property. You then have to buy another property within 18 months to not pay the capital gains on that sale. Now, you're not paying capital gains. You're still going to pay it. You just don't pay it right when you sell the property. You'll pay it when you eventually sell the next property, if you ever do, right? Smart investors will just keep rolling up those taxes to the next property, the next property, the next property, until eventually they own a $20 million strip mall, right? But eventually those taxes will have to be paid somehow, right? And then he says it right here. The deferred tax would be recouped by the federal government once investors cash out or move the money outside of Canada. And I think that's an amazing thing, right? Because if you buy a $400,000 property and then you sell it for $500,000, there's $100,000 there that is taxable, right? So you might have to pay, let's just say $20,000 on that right away, right when you sell. Well, this allows you to not pay that and then use that $100,000 to buy the next property. So you can afford to buy more property because you don't have to pay the tax on it right now, right? And as you have more gains, you can buy bigger, better properties. And, over the course of 20 years, that $400,000 property might be a $4.5 million commercial property, right? So I think this is amazing if this actually happens and if Pierre actually wins. Capital gains are incurred when an individual or business sells an asset like a stock or piece of property. Right now, Canadians must pay capital gains on 50% of those earnings. So I believe the way it works, I'm not an accountant, but you get taxed at your marginal tax rate on 50% of the profit. So if your marginal tax rate is 33%, you are paying 33% tax on 50% of the gains, which, equates to like 17.5 or 16.5% total tax, right? I'm not an accountant. That's kind of how I understand it. So if we look at the 1031 exchange that the US has, which I've always been very jealous that we don't have it here, basically what you need to know is that a 1031 exchange allows investors to defer capital gains tax on the sale of one investment property by reinvesting the proceeds into another like-kind property. So I believe you have to buy something that is of equal value or greater value. So you obviously can't defer taxes and then buy something cheaper. It has to be the same price or a greater price to allow you to actually defer those taxes. The like-kind exchange must involve real estate properties, not personal properties, except in specific cases such as real estate businesses. The exchange properties must be in the United States to qualify. There are strict time limits. The replacement property must be identified within 45 days. So you must find it within 45 days. And then the closing date must be before 180 days. Cash or mortgage differences called boot can trigger tax liability. So I don't fully understand that, to be honest with you, but that's amazing, right? So you sell your property. Ours is apparently going to be 18 months, the way I understand it. And then, you sell your property and then you have to find and purchase and close on another property within 18 months to not pay any of the taxes on the initial investment property that you just sold. Now, some people will hate this because some people believe that taxes are somehow, good. They're good for us. And I think that there's probably a certain amount of tax that is good and should happen for sure. But I identify as a capitalist, right? Like I wouldn't call myself a conservative or a liberal or any of the, I like to place my vote with the people who I think are going to let capitalism do its thing the most, because capitalism allows us to live this amazing lifestyle. Basic capitalism, another word for it is just competition. And competition keeps, it allows us to get the best product at the lowest price. I mean, you're watching this on a platform called YouTube, which is the result of capitalism. Maybe you're watching it on an iPhone or a MacBook. That's capitalism. Like everything we have is basically the result of capitalism. So I like capitalism, and this is, basically getting out of capitalism's way, right? This is allowing the market to do what the market does. And I think this is why, for example, the States has had this pretty much forever, for as long as I can remember, and their property values are a lot lower than ours. I actually think this would free up a lot of supply in the market because you have a lot of people who are like, oh, if I sell now, well, I only get this much money after I pay tax and after I pay real estate fees and all this stuff. Well, now they get to keep an extra 40, 50, 60 grand when they sell because they don't have to pay the tax. And this might actually free up a lot of supply and help keep prices lower over the long term, because that's pretty much what taxes do. They restrict supply, they restrict trade. And when you restrict trade, you get a lower supply of that thing, right? So people are going to say, oh, this is just going to be, a feeding frenzy for investors. Well, it might actually free up a lot of supply and help lower the overall growth of prices in the housing market. That's obviously yet to be seen, but I think this is an amazing thing, right? This is what makes it so much easier to become wealthy in the States. Like the fact that you can buy a duplex for like 200 grand with a 3.5% down payment, rent out the other 3. Now all of your mortgage is paid. And then eventually 5 years down the road, when you've made a bunch of money, you can sell that and then 1031 into like an 8-plex, and then 1031 that into a 32 unit apartment building. And this is why it's so easy to become a millionaire in the States, is because they have tax programs like this. It's just easier to maneuver wealth down there. But yeah, I mean, I really hope that this comes in. At the end of the day, I know people will get choked at this. But hey, listen, I have a lot of friends who lean the other way, and I still like them as people. We'll debate sometimes. I think they're wrong, right? But like, I don't hate them as a person because they think that we should have tax on real estate, or they think that, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's a good idea. I would love to see this. I think this would be great. I think let's let the market do what the market does. Let's try to get out of the way of the market as much as we can. And I truly believe that we're in this situation right now because we haven't been doing that, because we've been trying to restrict and control things so much, and dumping a bunch of capital into the market, a bunch of liquidity, and then bringing 1.2 million people per year here, and like all these things. This is why housing is unaffordable. It's not necessarily because of overinvestment or any of these things, in my opinion, right? Yes, there was a lot of speculation, investors, and blah, 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 but people, that's a symptom of a problem. That's a symptom of an illness. That's not the actual illness itself. People are speculating, knowing that there's low supply, knowing that there's nothing coming. There isn't low supply because of speculation. I actually think it's the inverse. I don't think you would have as much speculation and investing if it weren't for all of these rules that actually restrict new supply coming to market. And yeah, I don't know, going off on a tangent. But anyways, if you think this is a good thing, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video. If you want to chat with me about buying or selling in the Fraser Valley, there's a link down in my description. I'm that Agent Kelly, and I'm making moves to move you. Peace.